Hello, today I will be doing an HL7 healthcare search and masking job, and HL7 stands for Health Level 7. These are medical documents. So before we begin, you are going to need a newer version of the IRI Workbench and an updated DarkShield API in order to use this functionality. So before we get started, let's go ahead and go into our IRI library, which is going to hold our data classes and rules. And this is just an empty project. So in the rules section, I actually have two rules created, but I'll go ahead and create another one in front of you, just that way you can see what we're doing. Before we officially jump in though, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the file that we're going to be looking at and some things that we want to mask from it. So as you can see here, we actually have a redaction rule, and that's going to be for the social security number, which is going to be somewhere within this segment right here. And then we're going to be doing format preserving encryption on the address. So from here, we'll go ahead and add another rule since we want to mask names as well. And we want to make them look realistic, so we'll do pseudonymization. And a really simple rule that we have is actually just scrolling down here and doing a quick setup pseudo set rule. And I'll just call this names, select next, and we'll select the US names. And the name type we'll just select as last, and it's going to automatically select the set file for us, and we'll select finish. So now we have a names rule, which is going to do pseudonymization, a format preserving encryption rule, and a redaction rule. So now that we have all our rules set up, let's go ahead and hop into the wizard. So we'll head over to the DarkShield menu. We'll do the drop down, new healthcare search and masking job. And here we're going to select the source type. So we'll select HL7, we'll select next, and it's going to ask us the folder, the job name, subfolder, and the type of job. Everything on this is perfectly fine. We'll select next. And this is our PII or PHI selection page. So from here, we went ahead and made it very convenient for you by creating these general grouping selections. So for instance, as you saw in the document, or if you are familiar with HL7, there is going to be PHI in a lot of these different segments in different places, such as names. You can see here it appears multiple times, not just once. And same thing with addresses. They're going to appear in different segments at different locations, and maybe even multiple times in the same segment. So instead of having to go in and know where every single bit of this information is, or having to declare it independently, what we did was we just made it very easy so you can just select the grouping that you want, and it's going to address all of those segments or PHI that is contained within that group. So for instance, when we select the social security number, any segment that contains a social security number will automatically be included. So we'll select social security and we'll select street address. Here there is an advanced section, and you can independently define different segments, fields, and subfields. So just to give you an example, we're going to go ahead and do NK1 and GT1. So you can see here the segment is NK1, and then in the second field we have a name. So it will be NK1, the second field, and then a subfield of 1 and a subfield of 2. GT1 will be a field of 3. This is the third field, with a subfield of 1 and 2. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll start with the NK1, and it's going to be field 2, subfield 1, subfield 2. And then we'll do the GT1, which is going to be field 3 with a subfield of 1 and a subfield of 2. We'll select next, and this is a filtering page. So in the last page, the general groupings that we had, you might not know, or you are not going to know, which segments and fields those are actually corresponding to, but this actually gives you a more in-depth look at exactly what we're masking. So when we select a social security number, all of these segments and fields are actually pre-selected for us. But let's say, for instance, we didn't want to include some of these, we can choose to select none, or so on and so forth. Same with street address here. But we'll leave everything selected since if they don't appear in the document, it's not going to affect anything. For instance, if this FAC segment isn't even in our document at all, it's going to be completely fine. We don't have to worry about it. So we'll select next. And this is where we're going to attach our rules to these groupings that we have. So from here, we'll drop down, we'll select a group, we'll select street address, and we're going to do a format preserving encryption. So we'll go ahead and just add the rule, and the rule has been applied to every single one of these segments in that grouping. We'll move on to the social security number, which will be redaction. But from here, you can see we have a segment, which is an optional selection, and it's actually going to break down each one of the segments for you. That way you can add rules to specific segments. For instance, as you can see, PID and NK1 actually appear multiple times here. So if we selected NK1 for our segment and selected the add rule, it's only going to apply those rules to those segments that match. But if we leave it blank, we could just add the rule to all of it. And then finally the advanced selection, which we want to do a name replace, and we'll add the group rule. But for instance, let's say that you want to only specifically do this GT1 3 or field 3 subfield 2 as a different rule. You could just do the drop-down menu and select whatever rule you wanted there. This repeating segment number is for if you ever have any segments that actually repeat on here. So if PID appeared multiple times and you didn't want to do anything with the first one, or there was only a specific thing you wanted to do with the first one, and then the second time it appeared, you wanted to do more, that's where you would go ahead and define in the repeating segment number exactly what you wanted to do. Since nothing is defined here, it's actually just going to go ahead and look for every single match and mask every single one of those that has a rule attached. I do want to go ahead and point out that if you don't have any rule attached to these groupings, it's not even going to search for those groups at all. It's going to do absolutely nothing with it. It's just going to ignore it since there isn't a rule attached. So we'll select next. And here we are having our data sources page, which is going to ask us where we're actually going to be looking at the document. So I actually have one already made, but I'll just show you really quick what it looks like. So if we click new, we can give it a name, we can give a directory, and then there's a specific set of filtering options that we have down here. And we just want to make sure that the HL7 documents that we have is the only one selected, just like so, since we're doing an HL7 job. And then we would just browse to that file. But again, since I already have one made, I'll just click HL7, select next, and it's going to be the exact same thing for the target. And once you make this connection once, you won't have to do it again because it's automatically saved. So we'll select finish, and we have our source, our target, and everything else declared where we want it to. We'll select finish. All right, and you can see we have created a DarkShield search and masking job. So before we officially hop over to our .dsc file, I'm going to actually point you over here to this data classes and rules page. So what ended up happening was we created a data class groups, which houses data classes, which is going to define everything that we had already previously done. And as you can see how big this potentially could get, it would be very time consuming if you had to go in and make one for every single one of these segments. However, you can also alter them directly straight from here. You can change the rule based on each individual data class, and you can also change the matcher based upon each individual data class, simply just by going into the edit, and you're able to change the field, the subfield, the repeating segment number, and so on and so forth. So we'll go ahead and open up the .dsc file, And here we can actually see it's using the HL7 street address, social security number, and then the advanced section. So we'll go ahead and run the DarkShield job. We'll do that by simply right-clicking the .dsc file, run as, and search and masking job. And just like that, the job is finished. Here we have two files, two .jsons to be more specific. So if we'll open up the results and we format it really fast, we can actually see the segment that was matched upon, the matcher, and the rule that was used to apply onto it, and obviously the masked result. So let's go ahead and open up the masked document. So just for convenience, I actually went ahead and made some comparisons to make it a little bit more visually appealing so you're able to see the difference between the two. So on our left-hand side is going to be our original, and our right-hand side is going to be our masked. So as you can see here, we have some street addresses that are going to be different. And again, that was just a simple click of the button where this is masked, and this is masked right here as well. And one thing to note is since we used format preserving encryption, these are actually deterministic here, meaning that they are going to produce the exact same result. So 355 and 355 to 007007. And then over here, we did a pseudonymization, which means that the names that we selected, and these were the ones that we manually typed and entered in, are going to be replaced with a realistic looking name, and in which case they are. So just like that, we have done a HL7 healthcare search and masking job.